The pressure is on you right now, and you've delivered another great lap. You said probably the most fun I've had in an F1 car. Why was that?
I mean, it's just the circuit. I mean, I think also probably the satisfaction of being on pole helps, obviously, but it's an amazing circuit to drive. You know, the high speed corners are right on the edge of being flat out or not. Which, you know, there's some tracks we go to where, you know, there's some reasonably big corners that are flat out, but this is, you know, really the edge of can you do it flat out or not, and you know, you never gain much time by doing that, but it always feels satisfying when you can. So it's just an awesome track for an F1 car. You know, so much downforce, so much grip, and so many high-speed corners. So I think obviously being on pole helped that feeling, but even if I wasn't, it's an awesome place to drive.
Let's go, baby. Good session, everyone. That was mega.
Lando Norris has just revealed new internal evidence about Oscar Piastri's McLaren after Qatar qualifying, and the discovery is far more shocking than anything coming out of the paddock this season. Moments after losing pole position to Piastri by only 1/10 of a second, Norris received fresh data from the engineering room showing why Piastri's car behaved in a way that even McLaren had not fully anticipated. This new information exposes an aerodynamic advantage hidden in the MCL39 that transformed Piastri's final lap and reshaped the World Championship with only 2 races remaining. Before we break down what Norris found, make sure you subscribe right now, because the title battle just became a psychological war inside McLaren. Qatar qualifying delivered one of the most dramatic internal shifts McLaren has experienced in years. Under the lights of Lusail, Piastri produced a lap of 1 minute 19 seconds and 387 thousandths that stunned the team and pushed Norris out of pole position by a margin of a little over 1/10. The tension increased because Norris had controlled every phase of qualifying until one single mistake through turn 2 destroyed his final attempt. While Norris processed his error, the engineers presented him with the first wave of technical data revealing exactly where Piastri found decisive time. The new evidence focused on the second sector, where the MCL39 behaved with an aerodynamic stability unmatched by any rival. Piastri carried extraordinary speed through the long sweeping sequence of turns 12, 13, and 14 with a platform that remained nearly flat even under extreme lateral load. The engineers informed Norris that the balance of Piastri's car had stayed inside its ideal downforce window throughout the lap, while Norris experienced a small rear drift earlier in the session. This difference created a dramatic separation in cornering speed that Norris had not seen live. The post-session data also identified the exact moment where Piastri won qualifying. In the high-speed change of direction before the approach to turn 12, Piastri generated significantly higher aerodynamic load than expected without triggering the drag penalty that limited other cars. Norris learned that Piastri's McLaren was so stable that he could commit to a trajectory that kept the front tires fully loaded and the rear planted. The small gain built through the sequence and transformed into the decisive margin in the final sector. This was the moment the atmosphere inside the garage changed. Norris realized that Piastri's MCL39 was operating in a performance envelope that even McLaren's simulations had not predicted. According to the engineers, the car produced its cleanest aerodynamic map of the entire season. While no new parts were added to the chassis, the team had found a perfect mechanical and aerodynamic compromise that allowed the car to run low without damaging the wooden plank, a problem that famously destroyed McLaren's Vegas race only days earlier. The discovery gained even more importance when they compared McLaren's data to Red Bull. Verstappen had fought severe bouncing through the weekend and continued to struggle with brake stability. His RB21 delivered a strong third place, but the internal analysis confirmed that he remained more than 2/10 behind McLaren due to mechanical instability and poor tire interaction. This meant that the Qatar Grand Prix would be shaped entirely by internal McLaren tension rather than external Red Bull pressure. The World Championship situation added fuel to the fire. Norris entered the night with 396 points and a chance to clinch the title early. Piastri trailed with 374 and Verstappen followed with 371. The engineers informed Norris that if Piastri won on Sunday, while Norris finished second, the title would move to Abu Dhabi regardless of Verstappen's result. The pressure intensified instantly because Piastri now controlled whether Norris could end the championship in Qatar. The final layer came from the radio messages. Piastri celebrated his pole with pure adrenaline, describing how he nearly lost the car in turn 4 but held the slide with confidence. Norris, on the other hand, apologized repeatedly for the mistake in turn 2, calling it a stupid error. The contrast between both drivers set the tone for McLaren's internal dynamics. Norris knows he must beat Piastri on Sunday to avoid letting the title slip toward a final showdown, and now he knows exactly why Oscar's car found speed that his did not. The central problem for Lando Norris in Qatar qualifying was that his session unraveled in a single corner, while Oscar Piastri delivered a lap executed with absolute aerodynamic precision. Norris had been in full control of the evening with consistent pace through every phase of qualifying, yet one misjudgment at turn 2 destroyed his final attempt. The data presented to him shows that the rear of his MCL39 slid just enough to force a hesitation, and in a circuit built on momentum, any interruption becomes fatal. While Norris attempted to recover the lap, the rhythm was gone, and the mistake placed Piastri in a perfect position to take pole. The second layer of the problem emerged once the engineers showed Norris the aerodynamic traces from Piastri's pole lap. Piastri maintained a level of stability through the medium and high-speed corners that exceeded the expectations of McLaren's own simulations. His car carried more load through the primary rotation phase of turns 12, 13, and 14 without sacrificing minimum speed, revealing that the chassis was delivering a perfect aerodynamic map. Norris immediately understood that he had not been driving with the same balance qualities. His own MCL39 had shown small fluctuations that he compensated for throughout the session, while Piastri's car delivered consistency without requiring the same micro-corrections. The third issue came from the vertical stiffness profile of each car. According to the engineers, Piastri's chassis produced smoother platform control across the circuit's fast directional changes. His aerodynamic platform remained flat and predictable even under rising lateral load. Norris, by contrast, experienced a slight rear drift earlier in the session, which indicates that the balance was not entirely locked into the ideal window. The leaked data showed that this difference grew more pronounced at high speed, where the smallest deviation becomes magnified into measurable lap time. Norris realized that his mistake was compounded by a car that was not offering the same structural stability. Another problem stemmed from tire behavior during the peak performance lap. The data shows that Piastri generated a cleaner temperature profile through the outlap, meaning that his tires reached the optimum band at the exact moment his push lap began. Norris had a marginally less efficient preparation phase. While the difference was tiny, these temperature differences shaped the grip characteristics entering the early corners. This gave Piastri sharper rotation through turn 1 and more confidence approaching turn 2. Norris's temperature window was still within the usable range, but the combination of preparation and his later mistake created a disadvantage that could not be recovered. The competitive environment intensified the problem. Norris entered the evening knowing he could close the World Championship with a strong Sunday performance, while Piastri needed to win to extend the fight to Abu Dhabi. That dynamic shifted the internal tension because Piastri drove with the urgency of a driver who could not afford a conservative approach. The engineers explained to Norris that Piastri's commitment in the final sector was extraordinary, especially given the narrow limit of stability. This put Norris in a position where even a perfect lap may not have guaranteed pole, making his mistake feel even more costly. The comparison to their rivals further sharpened the issue. Verstappen's RB21 showed instability through braking zones and produced heavy bouncing, which left him unable to match McLaren's aerodynamic precision. George Russell also lacked the peak performance to challenge the front row. This meant that the fight for pole was entirely internal to McLaren, and within that battle Norris was the one who blinked. The absence of external pressure highlighted that the problem was not strategic or environmental, but purely executional and technical within the McLaren pairing. Norris had every tool he needed, but did not extract the lap when it mattered. The final layer of the problem is psychological. Norris immediately apologized on radio, calling the mistake in turn 2 stupid, a choice of words that reflected his awareness of the championship context. He knew that pole could have allowed him to control the race and potentially end the title fight early. Instead, he now starts alongside a teammate driving with rising confidence and a car operating in a near-perfect balance window. The mistake alone did not cost Norris the night. The combination of that moment, the superior aerodynamic behavior of Piastri's MCL39, and the championship tension has placed Norris on the defensive heading into a race that could reshape the entire season. McLaren's engineering team entered the post-qualifying briefing under one of the highest pressure situations of the season because the data they had just collected revealed a level of aerodynamic precision in Oscar Piastri's MCL 39 that even their most optimistic simulations had not predicted. The figures showed that the chassis maintained a perfectly stable platform through every high-speed rotation, suggesting that the team had unintentionally unlocked an operational peak that offered enormous cornering efficiency. This discovery placed immediate responsibility on the engineers to understand how this happened and why the same stability window had not appeared on Norris's side of the garage. The first major pressure point stemmed from a platform control data. The MCL 39 is a car that relies heavily on aerodynamic load to sustain its rotation through long corners, and Piastri's traces showed a remarkably smooth vertical stiffness profile. Engineers identified that his chassis remained closer to the optimal aerodynamic ride height during the decisive sectors, which allowed the underfloor to generate sustained downforce without spikes or drops. This gave Piastri traction and mid-corner confidence that Norris could not match. The engineering team now had to determine whether this advantage came from subtle differences in driving style, tire preparation, or a narrow setup alignment that landed perfectly. Another high-pressure factor came from the corner entry telemetry. Piastri's inputs revealed a cleaner and more efficient steering application, which allowed the MCL 39 to keep aerodynamic load aligned across the front axle. Norris's earlier rear drift created a small imbalance that required corrective steering. The engineers were tasked with identifying whether the difference was a setup limitation or a direct reflection of how each driver manipulates the initial load transfer. Their challenge was to ensure that both cars could reproduce Piastri's stability without compromising the delicate aerodynamic platform needed for the race. Tire handling introduced another layer of pressure. The engineers quickly noticed that Piastri's out-lap tire temperatures reached the optimal range at precisely the right moment. His tires stayed within a tighter thermal band throughout the lap. Norris, by contrast, had a less efficient preparation, which subtly altered the chemical grip available through the early corners. Engineers now had to refine tire preparation protocols for the race start because even a minor difference in temperature profile can swing performance significantly in a championship fight. The comparison with rivals intensified the workload. The data confirmed that Red Bull and Mercedes continued to suffer from mechanical and aerodynamic inconsistencies that McLaren had largely eliminated. Verstappen's RB21 struggled with braking stability and directional rotation, leaving it several tenths behind in overall efficiency. This elevated McLaren's responsibility because the team now had a clear performance advantage and needed to convert it into maximum points. Engineers faced the challenge of ensuring reliability and reproducibility of Piastri's peak performance window across varying fuel loads and temperatures on Sunday. Radio analysis added psychological pressure to the engineering environment. Piastri described how close he came to losing the car in turn for yet maintained full trust in its behavior. That feedback confirmed to the engineers that the aerodynamic platform remained stable even at the limit. Norris, meanwhile, voiced frustration over his mistake and emphasized how it compromised his final attempt. Engineers needed to manage both drivers' confidence levels while ensuring that the setup evolution for the race remained grounded in objective performance data rather than emotional momentum. This balance is critical in a title-defining weekend.